Good evening, everyone. Thank you. Happy Halloween. Manny, how's my audio? Great, thank you. So, I come to you as Gandalf tonight. Gandalf the Black, I suppose, in this incredible wizard staff, which was created by a wonderful wizard who just passed away, Gary Jenka, Sensei Koan. And I told Roshi I would like to wear this hat up here, and she said, absolutely not. And I said, but it's Gandalf. And she said, well, I do have a staff that Gary Jenka made, and if you bring that up, then you can do it. So thank you, Roshi. And Gary, I didn't know him personally, but he was this wonderful organizational genius. And he had a PhD in organizational dynamics, and he kind of became a priest really early on in the 60s or 70s, or took Jukai and then became a priest and got transmission. And he served here as one of Upaya's first general managers or directors in like 2001, something like that. And he also served as the director of Zen Peacemaker Order for a couple of years. So he had an influence on our family, our Zen family. And he was known for his dry humor and his deep integrity. And so, though I didn't know you, Gary, thank you for the mark you've made here. And he was the one who gave us the Han. And so we're called to Zazen every day by Gary's Han. Tressa. Yeah, here, do you want to could you use this so that we can hear you? Thank you.
Thank you. Sensei Koan was one of my Dharma teachers, and he was also the abiding priest of the Santa Barbara Zen Center. So I just wanted to mention that in his honor, and it's so wonderful to see him represented. He would love it.
Thank you, Tressa.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. So Gary, as a Zen peacemaker, danced in the unseen world with the unseen world, and now he's joined the unseen world. So hopefully he's here with us. Thank you for everything. So this time of year, it really, really hit home today, huh? Cold. I'm still cold. But the leaves are mostly fallen. I mean, it's still beautiful, gold, but winter is upon us. And as I was thinking about this time where Halloween's right there around the corner, and we practice our Gate of Sweet Nectar liturgy for feeding the hungry ghosts day after tomorrow and the new moon, which is also All Saints Day, followed by All Souls Day. And I don't know a lot about these different traditions, so I wanted to kind of explore them because there seemed like there was some synchronicity there, or some connection. And so I want to share a little bit about that exploration, Gate of Sweet Nectar, and these traditional festivals, really, not just ceremonies, but festivals that the world, on different parts of the world, hold in this time of year when the veils seem thin and the unseen world becomes a little bit more palpable or there for us. And it is a fitting time, perhaps, to remember our ancestors and people who we miss and love, who have passed. And so many of these traditions share that element. So tomorrow is Halloween, where folks dress up as scary ghosts or other things. And feel free to come tomorrow if you want to join Zazen in your Halloween costume. You're most welcome. And I will be. One year I was a unicorn, so I'm not doing that. Koshin remembers. The Halloween's history is a mix, just like many of these traditions. It's kind of now it's sort of a Christian tradition turned pagan, but originally pagan in origin. And one of the originating streams is the ancient Gaelic festival of Samhain, I believe it's pronounced, or spelled kind of Samhain, but Samhain, which was a liminal time where the Ishide, these spirits or fairies, could more easily come into the world. And just imagining the kind of the Scottish Highland and these mounds, which may have been burial mounds from even more ancient cultures, were the portals between worlds where the Ishide might enter in this time. And kind of similar to the Buddhist cosmology, the spirit world is both separate and apart and right on top of or right there alongside. And there are certain ways that the barrier can be seen through, but usually we don't. We just kind of go about our day. But I think in those times when especially we're remembering loved ones and lost ones, that you feel sometimes a presence, whether or not it's a literal ghost or just a memory, it's there, it can be very alive for us. And I think it's beautiful that there are times when we actually take to honor that feeling and that and those ancestors. So the Ishide were not deceased people, but they were these spirits from this other world, and they would come out and they would kind of play tricks and wreak havoc. And so one of the things people would do is leave offerings for them or make propitiations to the Ishide. And also alongside them was said the souls of the dead were coming to revisit their homes. And so people would leave out a plate of food or leave out something for them so they could come home and be there. There was also this, it may have started here, this disguising oneself as an Ishide, as a spirit, and then going door to door, and then basically threatening, extorting, treats, trick or treat, right? If you don't give me something, I'll do something. And so there was this sense of we have to appease the spirits of the land to kind of keep things peaceful and to make sure the livestock lasts through the winter. And there was also an element of the people who were dressed up at acting as surrogates, and in other traditions too, of like representing those spirits or souls so that you could give to them, and then that gift on your part, that generosity, would yield good fortune. So these geysers, disguised beings, are kind of might be one of the origins of where we get our Halloween. And so very similar to this, but from a quite different part of the world, and it sounds like, or it looks like Aztec origins, Dia de los Muertos, Day of the Dead, which is coming around the corner. And here we see that more. We're close to Mexico. It's a Mexican holiday. And the image that often comes to mind is the sugar skulls, those beautifully ornate skulls, which are kind of like, it's a skull, so it's kind of scary, but it's just gorgeous, and it brings death vividly to life in a way that's very cool. And so the Day of the Dead is also about remembering our ancestors, and they also kind of provide food, and then, as often happens with these ceremonies or festivals, there's a celebration afterwards, and there are games and parties, and that's not just like a sad memorial, but it's a time of really celebrating life. And so I love that has that synchronicity there. And then there's the Chinese Ghost Festival and Japanese Ghost Festival, which is called Obon. And Obon happens earlier in the year, usually around August, but it's related to it as a festival of remembering one's ancestors. And most importantly for us in our tradition, during Obon, the Seijiki or Segaki ceremony is done. And that ceremony is where we get our Kanromon, our Gate of Sweet Nectar. And so this is where I was really interested in exploring, so how we only do it on the new moon, we don't do it during Obon, what's the connection there? And Bernie Glassman Roshi, who kind of created the way we do it here, came in 2015, taught a whole kind of series of talks on the Gate of Sweet Nectar, its history, and And you can still see those in the podcast. So please, like, you want to hear Bernie himself. Now he's also in the unseen world. But it was wonderful to revisit those talks and hear his voice and just, wow, what a mensch, right? He's just throwing out Yiddish left and right. Fakakta, what is that? I don't know. It's a great word. Mishigas, it's like every other word. And so Bernie trained, in traditional Zen for a long time before he kind of went his own way. And he practiced they did the Kanramon every night at ZCLA. And apparently they do this every night in many centers in Japan, and I think even in the West. They have an altar behind the main altar that's for the hungry ghosts, because the hungry ghosts would be maybe afraid of kind of the Buddha, the great Buddha altar. And so they have their own altar where the names are and the kind of treats and things are. So if you see that, an altar in the front and an altar in the back of a Zen temple, I think often the back altar is for the hungry ghosts. So he was working on this with, I think they were chanting it in the traditional Japanese, Sanskrit, Sino-Japanese, and he was working on a translation with his teacher, Maezumi Roshi. And the history of it, the traditional history is that it goes back to the time of the Buddha. And there are two different origin stories, which are interesting. One is that one of the Buddha's disciples, Moggallana Putra, or Moggallana Putra, who was known as the Buddha's kind of expert, the Buddha's disciple who was an expert in paranormal powers. So he had all the siddhis. He could read minds. He could move his body wherever he wanted. He was like a superpowered being through his concentration practice. And but one day when he was in deep meditation, he was reflecting on his mother who had recently died, and he wanted to know, how is she doing? And he focused his mind on where his mother was, and he saw a horrific sight of his mother hanging upside down in a hell realm, just tortured, suffering. She had become a hungry ghost. And he knew immediately through his intuition that it was because of some lack of generosity that she had performed in her last life. And so he was distraught, and he went to the Buddha and said, Lord Buddha, this is terrible. I can't abide this. Like, what can I do? How can I free my mother? And so the story goes, the Buddha then gave him this ceremony, gave him these dharanis, these mantras, these powerful magic spells that the officiant chants during Gate of Sweet Nectar that can transmute food and sustenance and create a sustenance of Dharma to feed the hungry ghosts, the nectar that they need. So sometimes it's called Gate of Sweet Dew. And I think I read somewhere that a better translation, well, it's literally Amrita, or the nectar of the God realm. And so it's this, giving them the nectar of the God realm and of Dharma so that they can be freed. So that's one origin story. And the other one is that Ananda, Buddha's main attendant, was sitting in meditation, and a fearsome hungry ghost appeared to him. And this being's name was Enku, or Firemouth, I think it was. And he had a huge, big, red, fiery mouth and a long, thin neck. Sometimes you'll see a picture of a hungry ghost and Ananda, and that's like this scene where Enku's just like, you will die in 3 days. And Ananda's like, oh my gosh, why? It's like, because you were naughty in a past life, and so these things just catch up with you, and you have to pay the price. And Ananda was like, oh my God. So he went to the Buddha and said, Lord Buddha, this just happened to me. I need to, the Enku said that I had to feed all the hungry ghosts, and how do I do that? I don't have anything. And the Buddha was like, it's funny, because Moggallana just asked me this morning. No, but he apparently gave him, this was the ceremony, this was the liturgy he gave him, and said, here is the way that you can do a ceremony out of the generosity of your heart, with all of your concentration, opening the compassion of your heart, and creating a feast for all the hungry spirits. And then you will absolve that karma for this life. So good thing he did that, because Ananda then became our second ancestor. And yeah. And so those are the two origin stories, and sometimes they get conflated, and it was hard to find, but it seems like there's a good reason to think that maybe they both happened, which is kind of a fun, that there was like, the Buddha just had this ceremony in his back pocket. And it kind of, apparently, as it came to the West, that one sort of fell off a little bit as one of the regularly practiced ones. I mean, they do, like the chants that we do through the week, they do every day, and then many more chants every service. They're going through all of those liturgies. And so, you know, with kind of limited time and difficulty in chanting these things, I think in Western centers, they do less and less of the more esoteric. And so, in light of that, Maezumi Roshi asked Bernie Roshi to make it his own. Make a liturgy that is for your time. Because so the story goes, when Manzen was first working with the liturgy in like the 1700s in Japan, he made it his own. And so this is how Zen has come to us. You know, it's taken on the layers of the culture and tradition. As Roshi sometimes says, you know, when we're dressed in these robes, we have the outer robe of the early Buddhists. We have it's like a Tang Dynasty scholar's robe for our inner robe. And then we have a Japanese kimono for our innermost robe. And then, you know, a Westerner underneath. And so we carry with us the layers of our tradition that isn't trying to stay exactly the same. That's not the point. It's making it alive for us in this culture. And so Bernie said, great, I will do my best. And so he brought in, for example, Krishna Das, a student of Ram Dass and famous musician, kirtan musician, and he asked Krishna Das to create to do the kind of main body of the text in his chanting form, in his kirtan form. And so that's the melody is the Hanuman Chalisa melody. And I'd love if we could sing it at the end. I think it'd be fun to just chant that part of it. And apparently he had asked him to do the whole thing, like the whole part that's like, you know, 7 paragraphs long, and he only did the first half of the first paragraph, but maybe someday he'll do it again. But I think it's good the way it is, though. It's perfect the way it is. And so he incorporated that kind of Hindu chant, and then you get the early Buddhist invocation, the Pali invocation of the Buddhas. And then we move on to the body of the Kanroman, which is really quite the same as what it is in the traditional text, all the way down to the no bo bohogi gari yatarai gataya, and all of those mantras are straight from there. And I actually found, if anybody's Buddhist geek, the Sanskrit original for those mantras, if you're interested, you know, because I am, but that's for another time. And so he left those in there, and then also kind of brought them to life by translating them into English, and even kind of switching some things around, apparently, to keep us on our feet. And then at the end of it, he has a Jewish chant. This is our life, the end of our days. Day and life, we meditate upon it, which is beautiful. So he kind of brought in different streams and different traditions to make it his own and to bring it alive. But the thing that you might be wondering about is the dancing. Where did the dancing come from? Was that part of the tradition? No, but the music was. So like, it's very traditional to have all this cacophony of music and trumpets and cymbals and just making lots of noise, right? So apparently one day they're doing, in the early days of this, when they're kind of pioneering how the ceremony works, they were doing this, and one of Enkyo Roshi's students, who was a professional dancer, said, "You got all this music, what about dancing?" And Bernie was like, "What about dancing? Let there be dancing." And there was dancing. So now we have the dancing. Although, you know, it's not really dancing, is it? It's like frolicking or cavorting. Is that? We just have fun. So we're going to do this on November 1st. So please come join. We'll sit for 30 minutes, very quiet and still, and then we'll go crazy. And you can wear your costumes if you want. So kind of how Kan Ramon came to us. And in the traditional way of doing it, it was still very much about ancestors and remembering the dead, and kind of, as Moggallana did for his mother, to help ease their way in the afterlife or across from one lifetime to another. It's actually similar to some things I read about the Day of the Dead and All Souls Day, this sense of like trying to ease their passage, because you don't want to imagine your loved ones are suffering. And so is there anything I can do? It's just like, is there something I can do? And it's like, yes, here's a way you can open your heart to compassion and give. And so, and at a certain point in the history of, I think it was in Zen Buddhism in Japan, they started to think about, okay, what about not just the ancestors of the people here, but also the people that don't have families to pray for them. And so they started, this is all the lost and left behind. So that was a traditional piece that was added in. The war dead, and the ones, the homeless, and the ones that died that just didn't have homes or families to kind of keep praying for them. And so the priests took it as their solemn duty to pray for those who other people didn't get to pray for them. And so then Bernie took that tradition and then blew it all the way open. Why not everyone? All hungry ghosts throughout space and time. And Bernie tells of a time, you may have read of this story, that he had a deep experience of seeing that we were all hungry ghosts. The homeless person on the street, the banker who never has enough money, the jealous spouse, the evasive politician. When we bear witness at Auschwitz, this is him, we remember the Jews deprived of family, liberty, and life, and Germans desperately caught up in a cesspool of dehumanization. All hungry ghosts. I felt that the hungry ghosts are me, and I vowed to feed as much hunger as possible. So much of what Bernie has done is come through this awakening to the cries of the world, hearing the cries of the world and of the hungry ghosts, and knowing his own hungry ghost too, and seeing that. And so for me, this ceremony is as kind of esoteric and weird and magical and mystical as it is not really different from Zazen, of the ceremony of showing up to all of life and seeing what arises. When the officiant goes up and there's a part where they're offering incense and they're looking up in the rafters. Has anybody of you noticed that? It's like they're looking up in the rafters. What are they doing? And you're putting your attention on the places where the hungry ghosts might be hiding because they're afraid to come in. This big magical ceremony. It's like, what's going on in there? And Bernie did this. He was like pretending to be, what's going on? I don't know if I'm allowed. I don't think I deserve to be here, but they're saying come, so maybe. So you're like, come, gather around and share this meal. And so you're welcoming in the hungry ghosts. And actually, one thing I was reading said the doors are always open. I think we should probably have the Zendo doors open when we do this liturgy. It's going to be cold, but... and so that sense of bringing in everything. So Bernie, I thank you for this gift, this liturgy, and for all of the things that you've done. Bernie passed away a few years ago, and I didn't get to know him well, but he was such a presence and had such an effect, and I'm so grateful that he was my teacher's teacher, and that Roshi thinks very fondly. Roshi Joan also thinks very fondly of him and tells stories. So why is this? This is the thing that was really up for me in this exploration. I mean, almost goes without saying, but like the question, why is this so alive this time of year? Why is it in ancient Aztec and, Mesoamerica and then Christian Europe and China and Japan? Seems like so many places, probably many more, have this sense, this feeling of remembering our ancestors, of being present to what's alive. And, I think of loved ones that have passed, and it's painful on the one hand to think of those we love and they're not there anymore. And on the other hand, it's heartwarming to think of them. It's like it also teaches us something too and gives us something. It's like it's the same quality perhaps as mono no oware, the slender sadness, the inseparability of beauty and impermanence. Is that same feeling of remembering our ancestors. And I can't remember if it was Roshi or someone said, that feeling, that is the feeling of just this. It's not like all woe is me and sad, and it's not like everything is fine and happy. There's something in between, this joyful, sorrowful space of awareness that remembering our loved ones who have passed brings up. I remember my grandfather, who I didn't know well. His name was George Bentz. I'm Noah Bentz. And George, I think he would have been 100 a couple years ago or recently. He died some time ago. But I remember I must have been only 5 or 6, but I remember his booming baritone kind of like yelling at me across the yard, hey, lovingly, in a good way. And he was already old at that time, but I think of that and how alive it was for me and how I barely knew him. But when I play the piano, which is rare, but it was his piano that was given to him by his mother, who was an actual concert pianist, then given to my father, and then given to me. And so that feeling of being there in front of this piano, and there's a cigarette burn where he had left his cigarette there, and it's just like, I'm sure he was really mad when it happened, but now it's the memory, I can't play it and not think of him. And so I'm glad to have a time to remember my grandfather. And then, so there's the family ancestors, and then there are our lineage ancestors, who, I think we're so grateful for passing down this teaching one way or another. And it's like this, well, did they, was it really from Mahakashava to Ananda to Shanavasa to, and we read this list and probably not. But the meaning for me of this kind of direct line, and of course family is a tree, right? It's never just a line. And yet to have that represented, and when those of you doing Jukai who are doing the lineage chart, you make this red bloodline of the ancestors. And to me that's symbolic of the warm hand to warm hand connection that you have with your teacher. The ones, and their teacher's teacher, Bernie, and Mayazumi Roshi, who of course I never met, but I see his picture and I'm grateful. And then on our ancestors' altar, and you've got their teacher, and then of course, all the way to Dogen, then we've got the Buddha. And if we really open ourselves to the fact that these were people, they had lives, they had loss, they had suffering, they wrote incredible works, they did teachings, but they too were human. And that human connection is just the one where there's care. I called Roshi about this in a talk, and I was just like, I'm not sure what to talk about. And we talked with Kozan this morning. He's like, where's the personal story? I still haven't got there yet, but I will. And I just felt, such gratitude for the connection we have with our Dharma siblings and our Dharma parents. So for me, Gate of Sweet Nectar and practice in general is bringing it out of the head and into the heart, I think. Like making it feel alive. Because I love to geek out on the Dharma texts, right, and get into Dogen and stuff, but then it can get too heady, as we sometimes know. Even when I'm saying, like, oh, it's to get us to the edge of our, yeah, Kozan's like, yeah. But what about feeling it? Where is the heart?
What about it?
What about it? So the other day, my wife's purse was stolen out of the car. And, you know, it was upsetting and things, but it wasn't like a huge loss. But we were kind of working with it. But the thing that was really interesting was I had a tracker, a little tracking chip card thing in the wallet. And so after they had gone and they already started to try to spend money on the credit cards and stuff, the tracker was down by Connie's grocery store. And so I went down, it was the dark by then, and I was kind of looking around for it. And I had my phone, and it shows on the phone, this particular tracker doesn't show exactly where it is. It just tells you whether you're connected to it. So I knew I was within like 50 feet of it. And I looked and looked and looked, couldn't find it. Cop came and we spoke to him, and I gave the kind of the details. And we had some pictures of them from the footage from the car, which was nice. And so that was it, that we couldn't do anything. And then the next morning, I saw that the tracker was on the move. And I was like, ooh, all right. It must have been, now it's they must have had the purse in the house, and then they like left, and I had a whole story, which is completely wrong. But I was seeing there in the morning that it was at the De Vargas Park, where the skate park is. And I know sometimes unsheltered people sleep there at night. And I was like, okay, interesting. And so we were gonna go there, but then by the time we got in the car, it had moved, it was starting to move down St. Mike's. And so, okay, we're driving down there, we're kind of like looking around, and it locks on, and I know it's like right there. I've got it on my phone, but the problem is, it says it's over there, and as soon as it locks on, it says it's where you are. So it's just kind of like, okay, now I have to go away so that I know where it is. And so we keep kind of going around. I mean, Nicole's like, why are you driving like that? You're gonna get pulled over. And I'm like, I gotta find it. There's my hungry ghost, right? I needed to know. I just had this, like, I just need to know, you know. I'm not gonna get anything back probably, but there it was. And so we finally end up at the Wells Fargo there. It looks like the tracker was there, and was looking at all the cars and didn't see anything, and went inside, and there's just a couple people inside, and I'm kind of like looking around like a hungry ghost, like real suspicious. My phone, you know. And there's like a woman there with a wallet, and I'm like, is that her wallet? And none of them were the people who actually stole the wallet. So I'm not looking for the thieves right now. I'm just trying to find, maybe there's a wallet, maybe there's a tracker. And I'm standing there and I'm overhearing, there's a gentleman in a wheelchair who's got like a bag on the back of it. He might be homeless. And he's talking to the teller. And I'm kind of waiting to hear, is he gonna try and like use a card or something? And, you know, I felt bad for judging. And I also was like, I don't think anybody else is in it. So that was going on. And I didn't want to kind of make a scene or anything. I was sure he was not the one, you know, who stole the wallet, the purse. And then I talked to the bank teller, and I was like, dude, you know, he's doing that. And then he starts to go out, and he kind of pulls out of and I'm like, what should I do? And Nicole's like, just go talk to him. Just like, no big deal. And I was like, okay. So I go out there, and I kneel down next to him. So we're kind of eye to eye. And I said, sir, can you help me with something? He's like, yeah, of course. I said, my name's Noah. And he said, my name's Joseph. And so kind. And I said, a couple guys stole my wife's purse. And I was wondering if you might have seen these guys. And I showed him the picture. He's like, yeah, maybe that guy. I think he stays at Pete's place. And, you know, and I was like, okay, any names? And he's like, no, I don't know. I was like, okay. And then the other thing is, my wife's purse had a tracker in it. And I think they might have like slipped it on you or given you something that had it in it. And he's like, oh, really? Yeah, check my stuff. You know, look through my stuff. And I was just like, wow. Okay, thank you so much. And you know, and it was really, really awkward. And I felt like, here I am, like, you know, just the privilege and the gap was just so in my face. And my hungry ghost was there, and I had to know. And it wasn't that it was the wrong thing. I mean, I felt like, okay, we made a connection. He wants to help me. He's saying go through my stuff. And it was still very awkward. So I'm there outside of Wells Fargo. The bank teller's like standing at their door watching me going through. I'm like, it's okay. You know, we talked. And this, he's got like this beautiful art kit, he's working on art, and Nicole's talking to him about his life, and he'd just lost his leg for, disease, and he had been caretaking a house and got kicked out of the house because the owner died. I mean, it was just tragic, just so sad. Now he's sleeping in the park. No self-pity. Just dignity. So much dignity. He said he was a pastor. And he preached the word of God. And he let me go through his stuff. He took his blanket. He was sitting on blankets. He took the blankets off and put them on the ground. And then the last place I looked, so I had to look through all this stuff in his bag, and it's just 2 pieces of clothes. Last place I looked was a waist pack, which had nothing in it. And there was the tracker. And I said, Joseph, where'd you get this? And he's like, oh, that's what you were looking for? I was like, yeah. And he said, this person had given it to me this morning and said, what was this? And I said, I don't know, I'll look it up. I was going to go Google it. And I was like, wow, okay, well, that's it. Thank you so much. So we gave him some money and wished him well. And then he went back to his abortion protest that he was doing in front of Planned Parenthood. Didn't mention that part. He had a sign that said, ban abortion. And it was just like, of course we didn't talk about it, but the feeling was, the feeling, like my first feeling when I saw that was judgment, of course. And then what's this guy gonna be like? And he turned out to be just the sweetest soul I've ever met. So, that's my story. So thank you, Joseph, for feeding this hungry ghost. And I hope we meet again. And I wonder if you would chant with me the Chalisa. We can all start together too, yeah? Twice?
Calling out to hungry hearts, everywhere through endless time, you wander, you who thirst, I offer you this boding wine. Calling out, you hungry spirits, everywhere through endless time, calling all you hungry hearts, all the lost and left behind. Gather round and share this meal, your joy and sorrow I make it mine.
You'd like to chant that again? Please join us day after tomorrow morning. A couple other things coming up. On Sunday, November 3rd, we have a Gathering Dharma program at 11, and with Roshi Joan and Sensei Kozan and Kanda Mason, who's joining as a guest teacher for that. And we're going to have it followed by lunch afterwards. So we'll have the big screen up here to take in the Gathering Dharma. And then if you'd like to join us for lunch at 12:30 or so, we have a sign-up sheet on the front page of the website. You're all welcome, and online, just let us know so that our kitchen can prepare enough food. And then on Tuesday, November 5th, not just your ordinary Tuesday, we will be here. And do you know what's on Tuesday? Okay, no reaction. Okay, that bad, huh? Okay. Please join us. We're going to be here after dinner around 7 o'clock in Taizando, watching coverage of the news and just sharing space. So we're not broadcasting that because there's nothing to see. But we will also have the Zendo open for when there's been enough words. and you'd like to go to the Zendo, and we'll be broadcasting the Zendo. So quiet space online as usual. So please join us for that too. And then if you're new to practice or would like to explore a little bit of Taste of Beginner's Mind, our Fushin James Bristol will be offering Ease and Joy of Mornings, freely offered program on November 9th. So please sign up for that, in person only. And and next week on the 6th, John Paul Lederach, incredible activist bodhisattva, conflict, what is it called? Conflict resolution wizard, will speak on the Dharma of facing down violence, actualizing tender tenacity and fierce patience. So please join us for that here in the Zendo. We may need that, however the election swings. And if you would like to join for dinner after the talk, as always, please sign up. And if you join tonight, you're most welcome to join us for dinner. Thank you all so much.